Congress is peddling IRA and 401k snake oil. In this episode, we're going to answer the question, are IRAs and 401ks a good place to save for my retirement? Hi, I'm Doug Andrew. And what do I know? Well, I've been a financial strategist and retirement planning specialist for more than 45 years. And I've seen a lot of people work very, very hard to accumulate money for their retirement, their golden years. And they usually followed the herd, putting their money into traditional IRAs or 401ks with the company they work for, what have you. Maybe their parents said, the best thing I ever did was put money into this 401k at my employer and so forth. Well-intending, right? Well, then people got a real surprise when they saw the deduction reduction during retirement. And so way back when IRAs and 401ks were first introduced, I wrote an article that was published in several newspapers, how Congress is peddling IRA and 401k snake oil. And I pointed out in there that if you put money in a traditional IRA or 401k, under the premise that you will likely be in a lower tax bracket when you retire, that's probably not going to be true. People in a lower tax bracket usually didn't save very much. And so it was like snake oil, because the government, if they're telling you to put money in a tax-deferred IRA or 401k, it's because they're your partner. They're going to cash in at the end of the day with 1/3 or more of your money. It's the best savings bond they ever came up with for themselves, but it was like they were disguising that. And then later on, Time magazine in 2008 came out with a cover story that said why it's time to retire the 401k and do something better instead. And I'm like, oh. Now, it was interesting because I think the author was Steve Gandel, and he said at the very beginning, IRAs and 401ks have been a rotten repository, a horrible nest egg for most Americans. Well, what was he referring to? The crash of 2008. In other words, most people had their IRAs and 401ks in the market, and they saw whatever the value was in 2007 after waiting 7 years to get back the losses they incurred from 2001 to 2003. It took 4 years till 2007 to make back what they lost. And then one single year, 2008, they lost 40% again. And he goes, these are horrible. These are the worst. This is the rotten repository for our retirement nest eggs. So he was talking about the market volatility. That's actually the third reason that I give why you should not put money in an IRA or 401k, especially in the market. There are two reasons that I think are more important. So I think he missed the boat on that article. And this is why every time we go through a crisis, there are additional articles that come out. For example, a couple of years ago, I think it was like January 2nd in the Wall Street Journal, there was a headline, why the original champions of the 401k lament the day they ever came up with that idea. These are the ones who came up with the idea, and they lamented the day they came up with it. Why? They lamented the day they ever came up with that idea because they originally developed the 401k, which is a section of the Internal Revenue Code, as a defined contribution type of a plan, because most employers offer defined benefit plans. If you taught school, or you worked for the police department or the fire department or for Boeing or Harley Davidson motorcycles for so many years, you got a pension. That was a defined benefit of this much income based upon how many years you worked there and so forth. Well, it became harder for those pension managers to make sure they could keep those pension funds earning enough money to provide income for those. In fact, there were many pensions that got in serious trouble. And so they decided to flip it and put the risk onto the actual workers. And so they came out with a defined contribution. Where a 401k, you decide how much you want to contribute, you decide where you want it invested, and if the market goes up or down, that's your problem. It's not the company's problem to try to figure out how to continue to pay you money. So you are in charge of your investment return, not the pension manager. They thought that would be just a supplemental account. No, it ended up becoming the predominant retirement vehicle in America, and most people, they put their money in those accounts and they thought, well, the market just goes up and down and it'll be fine. And then when the market crashes, especially when you're about to retire or during retirement, people had to hunker down and stop spending because they could not get predictable income. So they said they lamented the day they ever came up with that idea. When the Time magazine article came out and Stephen Gandel said, hey, you know what? It's because of the market volatility. I mentioned that's the third reason. What are the first two? See, the whole premise behind an IRA or a 401k is that you're going to be in a lower bracket when you retire. So let's get a tax break on the contributions. That's the contribution phase. There's 4 phases of retirement planning. The contribution phase, where you set aside the money. There's the accumulation phase, where hopefully you're earning money with interest, dividends, or whatever. And then you have the distribution phase. And then there's the transfer phase that when you pass away, most people leave behind something that would have sustained them had they lived longer. And many times the worst place you can leave money is in an IRA or 401k. Those 4 phases, well, what they were thinking is, let's get a tax break on the contributions. Let's accumulate it tax-free. But it's not really tax-free, it's tax-deferred. So during the distribution phase, it's now time to pay the government their portion. And people thought they would be in a lower bracket, and they weren't, because they had a deduction reduction. They lost their deductions of the mortgage interest on their house, their children as dependents. If they were business owners, they're not contributing money to IRAs anymore. Congress keeps raising taxes. And all of a sudden, even if they have less income, they are in as higher tax bracket as they've ever been in. And so they didn't realize during the distribution phase that they would be clobbered with so much in tax. And now, if you die and you leave it behind to your spouse, that's okay, but you leave it behind to your non-spousal heirs, they can't stretch it out forever. The government wants that money out and taxed. They have 10 years to get it all out in tax. They can't keep using it the rest of their lifetimes like used to be the old rule. And so what's the solution? The solution is using vehicles that pass the liquidity test, safety test, rate of return test with flying colors, and that are tax-free. So what's liquidity? It's the ability to access your money whenever you need it with an electronic funds transfer or a phone call. I have usually found that people get into trouble when they lack liquidity. An IRA or 401k, you can't just go grab the money. You're going to be penalized 10% if you're under age 59 and a half. A lot of people, when they lose it, they see the account go down and they don't want to go get it until it comes back up to this level. Wait a minute, maybe it's time to get it out when it's worth less and get the taxes over and done with, because you want to be able to access money anytime without all those worries about taxes and penalties and everything else. You want safety so that when the markets go down, you don't lose. In retirement, why do you want your retirement income subject to the market volatility? The worst place to have your money in retirement is in an environment where you cannot have predictable income because of the market volatility. Then you want to earn predictable rates of return that average between 6 to 10%. Now, there are many years I've earned as high as 25% or more, but on the average, the last 25 years, I have earned 10.07%. For the last 45 years, I've averaged 8.2%. On my favorite vehicle, it's called the Laser Fund, and that actually is an acronym where those features come from. See, liquidity, that's the L. Okay, safety, that's the S, laser, LSRR. And rate of return is the R. See, laser, liquid asset safely earning returns is what you want. And so my favorite vehicle is the only one in the Internal Revenue Code under 3 sections that have been grandfathered for more than 100 years to accumulate your money tax-free. That's section 72E. To be able to access that money anytime tax-free with that liquidity. That's Section 7702. And under Section 101A, when I ultimately die, it blossoms and transfers tax-free. When I say blossom, it increases in value. If I died right now, every million I might have in my portfolio of laser funds would blossom to 2.5 million and transfer tax-free. There's not an IRA or 401k around that will do that. And people say, well, how much does that cost? No, how much did it make you? It's being paid for with a minuscule portion of interest that would otherwise go out in unnecessary income tax if I had my money in an IRA or 401k. In a regular IRA or 401k, I'd have to earn at least 15% to net 10% after tax. In a laser fund, I only have to earn 11 to net 10. What's that 1%? It's really not a cost. It is the actual benefit of the insurance that my million will then blossom to 2.5 million when I ultimately die, but it allows my account to be totally tax-free. I want you to learn how the laser fund can help you and why it's superior to IRAs and 401ks. Watch this episode and you'll be given the opportunity to get a free copy of the laser fund. It's 300 pages of information. I will pay for the book. You pay the shipping and handling. Is that fair enough?